Hi there, welcome to the Accidental Pop Star here on YouTube. My name is Ali Beg. If you are unfamiliar, I was once a member of 1990s boy band Bad Boys Inc. We were signed to A&M Records between 1992 and 1995, and we had a few hits in the UK and abroad. We also had a top 10 selling album, won a few awards before we went our separate ways in the spring of 1995. The experience was amazing. It was one-off, and I'm extremely grateful that I went through it. But you could say that that fleeting brush with fame left many unanswered questions, and that is the reason why I launched this channel. What I'm looking to do is speak to people who have had similar experiences. Now, their level of success may completely differ to Bad Boys Inc., but the DNA remains the same. For this episode, I am absolutely delighted to welcome to the Accidental Pop Star Ritchie Neville from Five. Five were hugely popular in the late 90s and the 2000s before the original lineup went their separate ways. They had huge number one hits in the UK and abroad, and they also broke America, which is no mean feat. Eventually though, exhaustion set in. Not just mentally, but physically as well. And it's one of the reasons why the original lineup actually split up. Ritchie and I discussed that and so much more. He's a brilliant guy. He's got a fascinating story, which I really hope you'll enjoy. Welcome to the Accidental Pop Star, Ritchie Neville. Hi Ritchie, it's lovely to meet you, mate. Thank you so much for jumping on. How are you doing?
Really well, thanks, Ali. I'm excited for this chat now. I'm glad we've decided to go off the cuff and just talk about whatever you want to talk about. It's going to be fun.
Okay, well, I hope you're ready for this, fella.
I see. Oh, I don't like that hand rub.
Don't worry, it's all good. Let's start right back at the beginning, fella. What were your ambitions growing up as a kid?
Okay, so from a very early age, 4 years old, I was very, very keen on singing, and I was very keen on like school plays and stuff like that. It's a strange one, and I look back and I think, what a weird thing. This is going to end up quite a long story, Ali, and I'm going to waffle. But so my ambitions were that, but not just that. My mom used to say to me, be careful when you say that, because not everybody understands like I understand. Because people would say, what do you want to do when you're older? And I'd say, when I'm older, I'm going to be famous. And it wasn't, I might be, or I'm going to try. I am going to be famous. It was like, I can't explain it. I just knew. I knew. And like weird things, like my sister's quite a lot older than me, and she'd go to psychic. She went, you came up again in my psychic reading. I'm like, all right, what? And they're like, it's just said your brother's going to be famous. Could see hands in the air, could see big crowds, things like that, which was really odd. I'd sit in school class and geography, maths, which just bored me to tears, and I'd just be sat out and I'd visualize, like walking out in front of big crowds and stuff like that. And I mate, when I joined my high school, was about 12 years old, and he was a cocky little shit, and he said, who I'm still friends with now, and he went, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, when I'm 16, I'm going to go to London and I'm going to be famous. And obviously I did it at 17, and he was like, it blew his mind. He was like, I still remember you saying that, which was really odd, because which we'll get into, I'm sure, as the interview goes. But for me, I don't know whether it was that I knew or whether I created it via the law of attraction, because it was later down the line I learned about the law of attraction, and I was like, hang on a minute, I did this growing up without even knowing it, like the visualizing and the feeling it before you've actually done it.
You see, that's really interesting, because did you have a preconceived idea about what fame was and is?
No.
Okay.
That's the thing. It was all really more about the performance and
Gotcha.
that side of it. There was a whole other side of it that I don't think anyone can predict or know. You know, when you're a kid, especially, you know, there's no way you could have predicted that.
So it's the old saying, isn't it, that people go to London because they believe that the streets are paved with gold.
Yeah.
Did you have that in your mindset when you moved to London, and why did you move to London?
Well, I literally got into the band. That's what moved me down there.
So it wasn't for the audition, it was because you were going into the band.
I went to the audition just from Birmingham. I just went down.
Understood, understood.
I was at school. I was just doing my A levels, and um, you know, after a process, I got in band, and
Okay.
I was like, I was in my last year of A levels, and like I was coming up to my last term, but the boys were moving in the May, I think it was, and it would have meant me going down in the June or something, and I always thought, you know what, I ran the risk of always being the outsider. I felt like if I was coming in late, I thought I want to be there and just enjoy this journey and just go for it. So I was tossing it up, and I actually made this decision based on a song that I'd never heard before. That came, I'd talking to my best friend who could drive,
Hmm.
and I was going, I don't know what to do, you know, and he said, I don't know, Dickie, I can't tell you. I said, oh, yeah, let's just put the music on. And they went, oh, now there's a new song due for release, and it's Ultranate free. You're free to do what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And it went, and I went, and it literally came on that second, and I went, decision made. Take me home. I've got to tell my mum.
Oh,
I'm
brilliant.
doing it. I'm going.
See can I just skip back 1 second
Yeah.
to the audition? So when you
Yep.
saw the audition ad in the Stage newspaper,
It wasn't the stage. It was a media thing. But when I saw, yeah, so the media had taken up on it because it was the Spice Boys.
okay, understood. So for the audition, you had to go down and audition first and foremost.
Yeah.
What did you do to prepare for that audition?
Well, I'd already done like a solo singing competition at school.
Okay,
So I'd sung George Michael Freedom for that.
nice.
So I thought, I already know the song. I might as well just sing that. So I remember going and getting this really plinky plonky backing track for it to sing along to. And yeah. I mean, that was kind of it. That was all I did, is got that ready.
Did you click with the boys straight away? Did you feel the connection with them as soon as you met them?
No,
Hmm.
no. It was, I actually thought some of them were a bit strange. I felt that some of them didn't like me.
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, one of them genuinely, for the first 6 months in the band, he did not do anything. He would not speak to me. He did not speak to me for 6 months.
So how does that work?
I don't know. And then one day he decided, you're all right. And he started talking to me. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah.
bizarre. That's absolutely bizarre because
Yeah.
the connection, we'll get into it later, but the connection and the togetherness is vital, I think. We'll come on to that later, Ritchie.
It is, but they always, Simon Cowell is on record, I believe, saying he's like, the thing with these boys is they were chaos off stage. They were chaos. They were, arguing, physically fighting. There was, all this stuff. But on stage,
He clicked.
there was something that just made it, that maybe it was because there was that energy between us. It came out in some way on stage. I don't know what, and how, but yeah.
It's your release.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you said there were no real preconceived about fame. What about boy bands? So and all of a sudden you now find yourself in this position. You've moved down to London. So did you have any preconceived ideas about what it was actually like to be in a boy band and what it would take to be in a boy band?
No, and I didn't like boy bands that much. Like I was a little, like I was into grunge, like and Nirvana and Pearl Jam. or dance music. I'd kind of left pop in the late 80s with Prince and Madonna a bit. There were some pop songs I liked. That's not to say I didn't like pop, but I'd, gone into that cooler kind of teenage thing. So I never, ever, ever wanted to be in a boy band. It was never something that I was like, yeah, I want to be in a boy band. So I meet people and they go, I always wanted to be in a boy band. I was like, I never wanted to be in a boy band. I fell into a boy band. And but preconceived ideas. I suppose you screaming girls, pandemonium like that, I suppose. That was kind of about it, really.
See, because you didn't want to sort of be or go into a boy band, you didn't really see that was your path. Very much like myself, I had absolutely no idea this was going to be my path and I was going to find myself in Bad Boys Inc. I actually think because I went into it quite open-minded, I think it kind of helped me understand it a little bit more about what my path was going to be. But up until that point, if someone had said to me, you're going to be in a boy band when you're 19 years old, I'd have laughed people out of the house.
Yeah.
But I think because it happened that way, it made me a little bit more relaxed about it because it just felt so surreal. It didn't feel real, Ritchie, until we signed our record deal, I got to be honest.
Yeah. And what was it? Did your management put you together and then shop you around to get a deal?
No, so we were put together by our record producer, who up until that point had just recently produced all of Take That's big hits. So then he put us together. Then he touted us out to the management company who took us on, and then they basically touted us to the record labels. And we got very lucky that we got a deal very quickly. So that whole process happened in a very short space of time. And I also think that's what happened. That's what made it easier for me, because 1 minute I'm modeling full time, earning a fairly decent crust. The next minute I'm completely out of that, and I'm now in a boy band, fully paid up member of a boy band. And I think because it happened so quickly, it helped me deal with it an awful lot better than maybe if it had taken like a long time. Did that
you mean
process
because
help
you were just simply had no other choice because you were thrown in on the deep end, and it was like, deal with that?
Yeah. We were totally thrown in. There was no talk of, right, this is how you've got to behave. This is what you've got to do. You're going to get famous. This is how you have to deal with fame. There was nothing, because as I've said previously, Ritchie, there's no handbook to this. No. You're thrown in, deal with it yourself, right?
Yes. And what you're saying there, I almost remember at 17 thinking, well, when's the chat coming? When are they going to tell us how to go? When are they going to tell us how this works? Which just kind of never came. And the only thing we had was 1 hour media training with I forget her name now, Kate. Can't remember.
Kate Thornton.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And just an hour's media training. And the one thing that stuck in my mind was journalists, be careful with them. For example, they could say the Queen Mother's a bitch. And if you laugh and say yes, they can quote you as saying that you said that.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's tricky. Right. I must lodge that in my head, because you got to be careful there then. And that was about the only thing. And the rest of it was just deal with that,
At the beginning, it was very popular for boy bands in and around my time, particularly, that you were labeled the moody one, the funny one, the deep one, all that nonsense. Were you guys given labels?
Do you mean given it by the record label or given it by the
so did the record company or the management say to you, right, you're going to be tagged with being the funny one? And that's
so you were told what you were going to be by your management and record company as a character? You were? Really? Wow. Yeah. Right. No.
I got told you've got to be the moody one because of the way that I looked. Go figure, mate. Go figure.
That is amazing. Right. So, no, we weren't given that. But I think that's possibly because maybe, like, I know that with us, it was more because I don't know whether, because, you know, you were a few years before we were. And prior to us, all boy bands were virgins that didn't drink and all of this. And you weren't allowed to, right? And they said, look, we don't want you, we don't care.
Just be you.
Oh, that's the window cleaner. I thought, what the hell is that? So yeah, they
just
said,
be you.
Just be yourself. Do whatever you're 17, 18-year-old guys. Just do what you do. You don't have to say you're a virgin. You don't have to say you have a drink. You don't drink and stuff like that. I think that we naturally fell into those characters, or maybe to a point, some of us just were those characters. But yeah, that was a rub for me because I, at that time, fell into the kind of blue-eyed cute one, and that wasn't necessarily entirely my character. So it's sort of, when I look back now, certainly post band, it made me rebel against that character a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's probably made me do things that are maybe what's the word, not dysfunctional, but you know, not the best things, because I'm rebelling even internally, psychologically, against that label. Yeah,
I always felt, Ritchie, that I was acting.
Well, you are acting, because but only as much as any salesperson is, right? You know, you make an album, you're living what a lot of people dream to do. So when a journalist, you might have a million things going on. You've had 4 hours sleep because you were working late last night. You've been up for an early morning TV. You're tired, and quite honestly, you just want to go to bed. But you're selling an album, and when a journalist says, "So how you feeling, guys? Are you excited for the album?" You know, 9 times out of 10, sometimes you would go, "Do you know what? I'm fucking tired. I'm pissed off." You know, but then it's like people aren't interested. They don't care. So you go, "Yeah, look, we're really excited about the album," which, you know, we are and stuff. But yeah, sometimes you have to act when you're in a public facing industry. It's the same if you work in retail. They're acting, aren't they?
There came a point, I remember, I can clearly still recall it. There came a point when I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm not acting anymore, because what you just said about not having
Did you become the moody one?
Oh, big time. You got no idea, fella. I still am. I remember we used to always get asked, what do you think of Take That? And I was like, oh, brilliant. Love them. They're fantastic. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite color? And then it was just at the end, I was like, so what do you think of Take That? Guys, I got to be honest, I couldn't care less about Take That. I don't give a monkeys about Take That. What's your favorite color? Well, really? Is that all you've got? And it started to irritate me after a while, getting asked the same questions and expected to give the same answers.
Yeah.
And I remember getting pulled aside and like that. You're going to behave yourself a little bit more. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. You know? I'm bored. Bored. I know what you mean. We'd entertain ourselves, like you just reminded me of, more so like 2 years in, where, you know, you're in, I don't know, I'm just picking a random country, Holland. And, you know, so obviously they always ask, so how did the band get together, right? Which is a fair question when you're a new band. Okay, fair enough. It's interesting. It's a new magazine. It's a new territory. Fine. But 2 years down the line, when you've already had 3 hit singles, come on, do you research? Do you even need to ask us that? We've been asked it literally 10,000 times now.
Yeah.
So we'd just start taking the piss. We'd be like, well, Abs was a hedgehog farmer. Do you know what I mean? And we would just start playing with it, and we'd be like, come on, come up with some better questions. If you're going to play that game, we're just not going to take it seriously.
Mm-hmm. See, after you had your first big hits, how did you deal with your changing public profile? Individually, I don't care about the boys. How did you deal with it?
You mean just how did you deal with your growing, sort of becoming more of a household name and fame?
You became famous. If you're in a pop group and you start having top 10 hits, which you guys did immediately, you become famous. So how did you deal with your immediate fame?
Okay. So I always say that fame is fun for 6 months, right? When you're 17, okay? Because it was something, because we were in a bubble, you know, we're constantly together, we're always in the van. So we stopped we were too busy to pop down the pub, and we were too busy, you know, so we stopped doing those things. Food was brought to us in a photographic studio or shooting a video. So we were isolated for a while, but we were doing shoots, but we hadn't necessarily had hits. And I remember pulling up at some traffic lights in London. And this guy, I had the window down, I was in the front, and the guy has gone, "Oh my God, it's Ritchie." And I was like, huh? That was the first time. And then I remember going to a shopping mall in Surrey, I think it was. I think it was Christmas shopping or something like that. And I literally, I'm getting screamed at. There's a crowd around me. And I was like, whoa. But actually, I remember kind of enjoying that at 17, going, wow, I'm famous. This is cool.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you're tired and you're trying to go out for a meal and people are coming up, and then it's nonstop. It's nonstop. It's nonstop. It's nonstop. And there comes a point where you go, I wish this had an off switch. I wish I could turn it on when I'm in the mood and go to work. And then when I get home, I could just turn it off and just be normal. Because you certainly when you're in a band that's top 10, like say top 5, top number ones, in the height of it, and also people think you're a millionaire and you're not. And I think if you were a total millionaire, that would make the difference, because you could shelter from that, but you're not. So yeah, it did become, I will never say no to anybody if they want. In those days, it was an autograph or a selfie, because, you know, they're not doing anything wrong. Do you know what I mean? And there were people that would be rude, and sometimes, and you'd say, "Oh, look, mate, you know, F off," or whatever. I mean, we were lucky that we were a boy band. It was okay for lads to like. So often they go, "Oh, I love your band. Like, you know, I love Slam Dunk or whatever." But yeah.
You see, I have to be honest. I was very much like you. There was a honeymoon period where I really enjoyed it. Was trying to enjoy it as best as I can, but then it became quite tiresome.
Yeah.
And it actually, and I've used this terminology before, it became my poison. And I remember going to Miami to shoot a video, and we got a day off. So I went shopping. I wanted to go and buy my girlfriend a gift for when we came home. And I remember coming out of the shop, and I was faced by 5 British lads. And one of them said, "I've come all the way to effing Miami, and effing Bad Boys Inc. are here." And one of them walked past me.
What, he just like not like being rude, like?
No. He kind of said it off the cuff, and his mates laughed. One of the dudes walked past me and he literally shoulder barged me and used a homophobic term. And I'm just like, now, I kept on walking and I laughed it off, but I got back to my hotel room and it troubled me, Ritchie. It troubled me to the point of, why does he hate me so much? The dude doesn't even know me.
It's jealousy because he thinks you're a millionaire and you're living the dream. That's simply it. It's simply it. And he's young. And now, if he's our age now, he might look back at that and gone, "I was a bit of a dick that day." Yeah,
but
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the use of the homophobic terminology also was like, why?
Yeah.
And I have to be honest, it troubled me for the rest of the time in the band that there were people actually out there that hated us,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
particularly guys. And I found
I
that really
yeah,
difficult.
yeah. I noticed that it was about 5 or 6 years, I think, after the band. It was a lot post band.
Yeah,
I was rebelling against my blue-eyed boy band image, and I'd
yeah,
grown my hair.
yeah.
And I was out in a pub, but I was with some old school friends and things like that. And somebody noticed because I'd learned and to just be non-reactive and quite Buddhist about anything that came my way, because you have to be, otherwise you'd be in brawls every 5 minutes.
Mm.
So you just let it float off you. And somebody pointed that out, and I didn't even think about it. I just so used to it, and they were like, "Wow, like why didn't you say something?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't even really think about it. I just like whatever, you know."
Did you ever seek advice from, so when you're on tour, when you're doing smash hits, Paul Winners Party, all that sort of stuff, did you ever seek advice from more experienced boy band members? I remember doing this once and getting completely blanked.
So who did you ask?
Oh, I don't want to name any names, but they were hugely famous at the time, and he was their lead singer, and he completely blanked me and left me feeling like a complete tit and a proper fanboy.
Right, 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 right,
And
right.
all I wanted was a little bit of advice.
Did it
Did you
help?
ever do that? Did you ever seek advice?
Not really, no. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember we had I don't know whether you had this, because like you get into with the band, and I genuinely, all of us thought we'd won the lottery. We were like, wow, our lives are made. We're going to do really well. And then we start doing well, and we're like, right, our lives are made. However difficult it gets, and like all those struggles did come along. We also, it sounds like you guys got on quite well. We
Hmm.
did, we didn't. We were constantly at each other's throats. I mean, that was probably the most difficult thing to deal with, was the constant rowing and arguing and fighting. It was very frequent and quite violent at times. But I'm losing my flow now.
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
So you're talking about asking for advice from other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we would sometimes, when we weren't fighting, we would talk on long road trips and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we'd sort of say, how are you finding it now? Like, because for a while there, like I even became distanced from my family
Yeah.
and things like that, where it was like, because they're so proud of what you're doing, and friends even, they're so proud of what you're doing, and they think that you're living this dream. And then when you say, oh, I'm feeling really weird, and I'm almost like, I guess what I was describing was a bit depressed, like I almost feel a little bit depressed or something. And at the time, they didn't quite understand. They'd be like, well, what have you got to be depressed about? And then to tell a depressed person you've got nothing to be depressed about only makes you feel more depressed.
Yeah.
So there was that. So we would talk to each other. And another thing, another positive about the boys was we would keep each other down to earth. There was two Northerners, two Southerners, and a Brummie, and we would, if somebody started to get a bit like of a Mariah Carey, we'd be like, "Who are you, Mariah Carey? Like, come on, mate, you're whoever, Scott from Essex or Jay from Warrington or Rich from Birmingham. You chill. You can't come the pop star stuff with us. We remember who you were."
Did you not ever feel a responsibility to look after each other though?
Yes, yes, and we did, and ultimately that's why we broke up when we did, because we always said that when we knew we were doing well, we said, let's not ever run this ship till it sinks. Let's leave what at the top.
Yeah.
Let's let the last thing be something big. And we just made our third album, which was, I thought, our best album. And again, I mean, I'm quite fatalistic and quite spiritual, I suppose, about things. I'm telling my side of it, but things started to happen. We started to promote that album. We were doing Let's Dance. It's no secret now. I did an interview with Sean. I was paired with Sean, and the journo was typical. How you doing, guys? You know, how are you? Yeah, great. You know, really good. And then Sean's just sat there, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm great. I'm just so good." And he just kept repeating this over and over, and I was like, And then he just stood up and walked off. So I finished the interview 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, whatever. And I went up to the tour manager and I says, "Where's Sean? Like, is he all right?" And he went, he's in the van. We're going to take him home. I think he needs to go home. So we were then informed, do not contact Sean. And I think we had mobile. Yeah, we did have mobile phones, but, you know, we spent so much time together. It wasn't like we rang each other a lot outside of work anyway, because it wasn't like we were outside of work much anyway.
Yeah.
So they was like, categorically, management, record label, do not call Sean. He doesn't want to speak to anyone. He just needs a bit of time. Okay. The official line is, he might be away for a while.
Yeah.
So you're going to lie and you're going to say he's got glandular fever.
Yeah, I remember.
So we did. Actually, what he had was like an emotional breakdown, a nervous breakdown. It had all got too much for him. And that's why he was the cardboard cutout in Let's Dance. Then we flew to Belgium and we were doing a performance on this outside stage where there was a few platforms and we were staging it out. We were like, okay, then we'll get on the platform. We were doing a rehearsal for it. And it was almost like he didn't see me. He didn't do it on purpose. I'd climbed up onto the platform and Jay came running over, like just larking about. And he gamboled, like rolled onto the platform and just rolled into my leg. But it was like his full weight rolled it. And I did a 360 really, really bad sprain. I mean, really bad. Like, I mean, I was like cold sweats, pale, like, And everyone was like, oh, he is proper done. Has he broken it? And it swelled right up and everything. So I was having physio, having it iced, but I couldn't dance. So then we were a band called Five, doing a song called Let's Dance, where I'm sat on a stool and there's three of them dancing. Then we came to film Top of the Pops. Scott came in and I'm not sure whether his first son was born at this point. I can't remember now. But he came in and I just had a breakdown, like just started crying his eyes out. And I remember Jay and I were either side of him. We were sat in a hotel corridor. And I mean, you know, when somebody can't talk because they're crying so much and they're like, and I can't. Yeah. And we just both sat with our arms either side of him. And I remember we knew we were about to go number one. And I remember just looking at Jay and one of us said to the other, I can't remember who, it's done, innit? It's done. Like, it's done. Like, yeah, it's done.
Okay.
Like, you can have as many number ones as you like.
Yeah.
But people are genuinely falling apart now.
Yeah. Okay. So let's try and work out why you think it started to become fractured. I know that you had some issues with your record company in America. I know that also happened in Southeast Asia. But where do you think, can you pinpoint, Ritchie, where the pressure really started to tell? Is there a point, is there a defining moment when you thought, this is too much, it's becoming too much?
Yeah, one thing is that it's not like any other industry has a protective union, right? And there are only so many, like take lorry drivers, for instance, they can only drive for so many hours. Then they have to take a break,
right?
For instance, but nobody's looking into bands, right? So at the time, we worked 18-hour days,
7 days a week,
7 days a week for years, right? We barely, you know, I mean, we just didn't. You know, we were, when we look back, you know, like people think that we, you know, from our band, they think that we don't hate each other. I've got nothing but love for even the guys that aren't in the band anymore. I've got nothing but love for them. I might not speak to them. We're not in touch, but I've got nothing but love. And I also know that we were kids. We were thrown into something that was just insanely crazy. And we were knackered. I mean, we were so tired beyond. I mean, we'd do a transatlantic flight overnight and go into an 18-hour day. That, you know, we just weren't respected in that way. And actually, Richard Griffiths was the head of RCA BMG when we were signed to them. Years later, when we reformed, he'd gone into management and he was managing all Simon Cowell's acts. So he was managing One Direction. And now there was something. If you look at our album in the second album, I can see that we look like very, very tired people. We don't look fresh at all. We look bags under, even with the makeup, the lighting, everything, we look really tired. And I actually said to him, hey, Rich, it's lovely to see you, you know, la, la, la. And I says, mate, I want to know, because One Direction have been going a while now and they still look fresh. And he said, well, I've got a bit of a confession to make. We learnt from your generation of bands how far people can be pushed and how far people can be worked. And we've learned, like, so I can't remember his system or formula for it, but he said, you know, if they do 2 weeks on, they get 4 days off. They go home, they see their family. If they do a month on, they get 2 weeks off. So they do those intense things and then they go home, they see their friends, they see their family, they see their girlfriends or whatever that may be, boyfriends, whatever. Fundamentally, like, massively overworked. You know, I mean, no human being can work that hard for that long under that much pressure. Eventually, one of you is going to crack.
Yeah.
Psychologically, and unfortunately, two of us did. And you know, I remember you know, I was I remember what something else that wore me out psychologically was that because we were overworked, you know, I'm not blaming them, but a couple of the guys could be. It doesn't matter if I swear, right?
No, you can swear.
Right. I just want to be myself. A couple of them were right moody fuckers, right? with really important people like major TV producers and, like, you know, they did not give a shit. So I would then feel like I had to I'd be like, oh no. So I'd be like, he's just having a bad day. So I felt like I was like always trying to keep bridges built that they were breaking. And that was quite exhausting because it was happening quite a lot.
Yeah. I think that's was hugely important to me personally. I can't speak for the other lads, but I always felt we had to always be on a charm offensive because I knew that we had our limits, and it was the sound that I felt was our limit. And what I found particularly interesting was we were flying home once from Los Angeles, and Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran was on the airplane.
Yeah.
And he gave me some magnificent advice. He said to me, and again, never forgotten this, he said to me, because you are a band which is driven by your image, it means you have to be nice all the time to keep people on your side. But secondly, it means you've got to double your efforts when it comes to your appearances and your stage shows. He said, work.
That's really, you know, that's really interesting, actually. That is a really interesting take on it, and actually very true as well. Yeah, I've met Simon. I played with him at the Albert Hall. It was like a multi-lineup thing. And he's a really cool guy. Like, I really got on with him. But yeah, that is, when you think about it, yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the difference, and no offense, but I don't know, I'm not aware of your, like I say, when you were releasing, I was listening to Nirvana and stuff
It's a
like that.
wise move, trust me.
Uh, but I think with us, like that was something that, because boy bands were boy bands and they'd sing ballads and they'd sing like, you know, a certain type of pop. There was, I remember with like Dennis Pop, our producer, and our executive producer on the first album and stuff like that, there was this buzz from them because it was like, oh wow, like, you mean you want me to just have free reign to make like funky stuff and harder rock stuff with a boy band? And they were like, yeah man, come in, like, let's, you know, and they were excited to do that. And so I think, you know, that was part of our charm. I mean, clever from them as a concept, but also then us delivering it, that set us a little bit apart from your average boy band. Was that harder music as well? It's more musical.
Just going back a track, see when you're trying to get noticed, when you're going out and you're meeting magazines for the first time and all that sort of stuff, how were you able, because at the time there was an influx of boy bands all of a sudden. So how were you guys able to make sure that you were not tagged with, it's just another boy band? How did you do that?
I think genuinely it was nothing that we particularly thought about. It was just a freak of nature that we were certain characters that, like you know, like I've already just said, we did piss people off.
And were
If
you okay?
somebody said,
But were you okay with that up until a point?
up to a point, yeah.
Okay.
Like, so like, you know, we were ourselves, like, we weren't always honest. Like, sorry, we were, like, as in, you know, that question where they go, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, nine times out of 10, you'd go, we're really good, thanks. But sometimes the truth would come out. Do you know what? We're really, really bad. He's a dickhead today. And like, we're really tired. You know, and it just sort of, it was organic. It was organic. And like, again, Cal said, you know, he said we wanted, it was on some program, and he says something like, we wanted a band with a bunch of kind of streetwise kind of tough guys that were mouthy or something like that. And that's exactly what we got. And I think that, you know,
you found a perfect niche, I think, because I remember when you guys first came out, and I remember having the conversation with Matthew, who was our lead singer, going, my God, if we had music that had been produced for us like what it is for Five, God knows where we could have been. So I think you found your perfect niche. I tip my hat to you guys, I really do. When it came to the first split, Ritchie, did you, independently of record companies and management, did you have accountants and lawyers who had their vested interest in you as individuals to make sure that you were looked after when it came to the really difficult decision to split?
It wasn't like we contacted an accountant or a solicitor about splitting up. We, that moment happened where Scott had broken down.
Yeah.
If he hadn't have broken down, I think we would have probably carried on, and possibly maybe Sean would have come back. I don't know.
Okay.
But it was that Sean had gone, Scott's having a breakdown, and then I saw that problem with my leg as a bit of a sign. It was like, is someone trying to tell us something?
Yeah.
So no, nobody like that was consulted. Obviously, the record company had a massive vested interest because they'd just spent a fortune on our third album, which we were only releasing the first single of. So they obviously didn't want us to break up. Management didn't want us to break up. But we we got to a point where in the first few years, I'm going on. Hang on, I'm going to write something down now so I can come back to this. But split, right? Because we were rebellious anyway, but we did do the junkets, and I remember that where instead of doing individual interviews, we started being able to do press conferences. So we'd go to a territory and it would be in a big room and there'd be a lot, almost like you see the football managers do before for a thing, and that was so much better. I mean, it was just so much better. But anyway, we were doing Rock in Rio, we were doing the pop night. It was us, NSYNC, and Britney, and it's 200,000 people. It's the biggest gig I've ever done. I mean, it's crazy. And we had 5 days of press. So we were flying to Brazil, and we had a conversation on the plane, and we were like, oh, can we ever just, like, we never, anytime we went number one, we were never in the country to enjoy actually going, we're number one this week. We were in another territory. So we we're like, oh, great. Yeah, we're in number one back home, but we're in wherever, Thailand, Australia, I don't know. So we went, God, can we never like just enjoy it? Like, we're going to Brazil and like it's Rock in Rio, and we were already on our way, and then we were like, well, if we get there and we just say we flat refuse, we just go, we're not going to do the press. We're just going to chill out and have a mini holiday, and then we're going to do the show. And we were like, we can't, can we? We fucking can. And we were like, are we doing this? We were like, yeah, we're fucking doing it. We're going to actually just have a good time. So we landed and we were like, yeah, we just need to have a little chat. And the faces were like, what? We were like, yeah, when they were like, and they're coming up and they're like, well, there's a couple of TV shows that we really could do with you. And we're like, all right, we'll factor them in. We'll do a couple of the TV shows, but that's it. And that was when long story, we were staying in the same hotel as Liam Gallagher because they were playing the rock night. Bucket of beers. Hey, lads, come over. And we ended up getting absolutely trolleyed with Liam Gallagher that night. And we had 4 or 5 days of marvelous fun. So we had got to that point where we were like, hang on a minute, they are taking the piss now. And we should be able to enjoy a part of it. This is our life and we've achieved so much, kind of thing. So when it came to the split, obviously there was some pressure, but not massive amounts of pressure, actually. We said, look, I think it was more to management. We're just not feeling it anymore. Sean's not well. Scott's not far away from where Sean's at. We just feel it's got too much. And I was feeling it as well. It's not like I was like, I'd have carried on. I had more in the tank, but equally, I did feel that it would be a sense of relief. As silly as it sounds, because I know so many people dream, but at that time, it was like the nightmare and the could be over kind of thing. That all that pressure and everything and everything that it had been. And they said, okay, so you want to break up, go away for 2 weeks, have 2 weeks off. We'll all meet up in 2 weeks and we'll have and if you still feel the same, then we can't make you do it. So we had 2 weeks off. We all still felt the same. And that was that. Like, we just went and we said, yeah, we're done. We just gone number one for 2 weeks with Let's Dance.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, because when we started out, like I said earlier, we said we'd always leave at the top. So there was something that was like, well, we're doing what we said we were going to do. We're leaving with a number one. We're leaving at the top. It's not like, oh yeah, that band that ended up failing. We never failed. We made it. The last thing we did was we went number one and then we stepped away.
It's a very wise move. And I remember when you guys did it, for us, it was completely different. We never got anywhere near having a number one hit. But I remember at the time, we were deemed as being the third most popular boy band in the UK behind Take That and E17. We were winning awards, which was fantastic. And I remember saying to the lads, let's just go now. Let's just go now before that slippery road hits us, and they were unsure. So I decided to leave. But what I remember, Richie, is walking away from Radio 1 where we announced it. And then the next day I was like, okay, okay, that's passed me by.
Now? What now? This
what
is
do
where
I,
the problem, this is where
yeah,
the mind fuck
what,
really starts.
what do I do now? And all of a
Tumbleweed.
sudden, and it
Yeah.
happened within a period of 24 hours, mate,
Yeah.
I felt completely lost, isolated, and alone, and had
I
no clue what to do. And
completely
I had no
understand.
money.
Right. Okay. So my journey with that is exactly the same. And I liken it, as silly as this sounds, to, you know, how it's common knowledge that a lot of squaddies, when they leave the army,
Yes.
struggle, right? Because they've had such a regimented life and they've kind of know what they've got to do, when they've got to do it, and da 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 da. And all of a sudden, nobody's like picking up the phone telling you you've got to be somewhere, and da da da. And it was like okay. Then you fall into some bad habits and you start doing silly things, and then, you know, like you said, you know, I've it's no secret, you know what, it was, I wasn't broke immediately, but I had a one hefty mortgage on a really nice house in Hampstead. And quite honestly, I was totally lost. I was a lost soul. I mean, completely lost. Not immediately. I put on weight, you know, I was eating loads of food, drinking way too much. And actually, because I'd had that regimented thing, I remember my brother or someone was around, and I took my t-shirt off, and I remember somebody going, "Freaking hell, man, you really let yourself go. Like, what are you doing?" And I hadn't even noticed. I looked and I went, "Oh yeah, I have, haven't I?" Like, wow. And it was just, and then I went, right, that's it. And I started getting up at 5 a.m. and I'd be in the gym. Why? I mean, I mean, I'm an intense guy anyway. I think I've got ADHD, right? But I was like, I'd put rocky training montages at 5 a.m. Then I'd be in the gym for 6. I'd be there till lunchtime. And then I'd do the bad things. But I'd train. I remember somebody saying to me, "It's like, you have a psychotic look in your eye when you're on that running machine." I'd do like an hour, like, you know, got myself back in shape. And then I don't know, I lost it again. And then, long story short, I ended up getting a girlfriend post band who was nothing to do with the music industry. And I remember her, I had this, my rub was that, as I'd said, like growing up, I'd always had such a hyper focus and known exactly what I wanted to do. And all of a sudden, I had no clue what I wanted to do. And I really feel for people that have no direction in life, because if you have no direction at all and no anchor point, I always liken it to like being on the sea in a boat. The waves are just pushing you around. And, you know, I remember her saying to me, like, "I have never seen anybody as lost as you are right now." And I'm talking like, you know, I was doing bad things. Like, I mean, I was drinking way too much. And I remember I would drink because I was basically depressed. I should have gone to the doctors.
Yeah.
I should have gone to the doctors and said, "I'm really struggling," but I didn't.
Yeah.
And I would feel completely and utterly lost and depressed until I drank. And then when I had a drink, I could lighten up and laugh a bit and be like, yeah, yeah. But it got to the point that 3 p.m. was my cutoff point, and I would open a bottle of brandy and I would swig it neat from the thing. And that happened. That went for a while.
About 4 or 5 months after we split up, I tried to get back into modeling, and it just didn't happen because everyone was like, "Oh, aren't you that lad from that boy band?"
Yeah.
And it just wasn't happening, and it was soul destroying.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I started playing semi-professional football, and my coach said to me, "Why don't you go and do your coaching badges? Just go and do your coaching badges."
Oh,
so I remember going to Scotland,
Yeah.
going back home to Aberdeen, and I spent a week at home, and I did my Scottish Football Association coaching badges, and it just so happened that the coaches doing the course were two Aberdeen Football Club legends, two heroes of mine.
Oh, wow. That must have been amazing for
And
you.
it was absolutely incredible. And I remember we had a bit of a lunch break, and one of the guys, Drew Jarvie, pulled me to one side and said to me, make this your purpose.
Yeah.
Make football and coaching your purpose until you can decide what you want to do.
Something else.
Life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it was unbelievable advice, because all of a sudden I went back to my home in Hertfordshire after I finished the course. And all of a sudden I had a purpose, Ritchie.
Yeah.
But I had to find real inner strength to do it. Where did you find your inner strength to get back on track?
My purpose, actually, just for sorting my life out from my drinking and stuff like that, was, I mean, look, I'm going to be really honest with you. Do you know what? Like, I got to be careful because I've got a daughter.
Yeah.
I didn't feel, like, as a man, right? You want to also feel useful to your family, right? You want to feel useful. And I felt like a burden. And then I got into, I decided to go to a Kung Fu class, right? And I got really into it. And it was something, they did 4 classes a week for 3 hours a time. And I was there for every hour of it. I was sparring, I was learning the forms, and I did that for a couple of years. And I mean, I'm talking, I could do the splits both ways. I was like really into it. And that gave me my purpose to be more healthy and productive in that sense. Did it give me my life purpose? No, not at all. And I don't think I still didn't have a life purpose for a long time. And actually, getting back and doing the big reunion when the band was reformed.
Yeah.
And stepping back on stage, I've never had stage fright like it. I've never had stage fright, but I had stage fright at that first Hammersmith Apollo gig. I can't even tell you the fear. We were opening the show because we were Rocky, so it's me doing it. And I was stood behind the screens that were about to open, and there's all the big VTs and, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. In my head, I'm going, I can't do it. I can't do it. And my head was actually trying to go, like the weak side of my head was going, you've got to find a way to run. How can you escape? How can you escape? And the other side was going, you can't escape. You have to do this. And Scott said, he looked across at me and he went, oh no. And he could just see. And and as he was walking out, he's looking at me to see if I bring the mic up. And my mouth was so dry. And on it comes, and I brought it up. And I went, buddy, you're a boy, make it. And for about 5 seconds, I wasn't right. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, yeah. I remember this. Oh, yeah. Entertain the crowd. Right, cool. And then it was like putting a shoe back on. And, then I went,
sorry.
You know what?
Yeah. Did you find it therapeutic? Getting back on stage?
I found the whole thing therapeutic, because for all those years, like after the band, I was almost apologetic for it. Like if I was in a pub and I was with the guys and they were like, oh, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm in from the Shit Boy band. Or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, because I moved to another country.
Yeah.
Ali, right? Because I literally felt, that's what I was telling you. I felt like a burden to the people that I was with at the time. And then I got into my Kung Fu, and I had the forms to join the British Army.
Really?
And yeah. And I'm talking, I had the enrollment forms. And the only reason I didn't was because there was a war going. It was Blair's war in Iraq.
Gosh.
And I was like, I can't go and do that, because I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't be a pawn for politicians. That's not my way. So then I was like, maybe I'm just going to go to China for a year and just like train with Shaolin monks, and just go hardcore into that. And I did neither of those in the end, but I was seriously considering it, like seriously considering it. Then I moved abroad, long story short, because I always said I felt like I was living a ghost of something that I did that I couldn't escape. And I just wanted to get back to Rich from Birmingham, who get connect with that 17-year-old before the band a bit more, which I did, and I could, and I think I needed that. I needed to do that.
Let's talk about where you are now. So you guys are back performing, new music. Love your new music, by the way. I was watching it on YouTube last night. It's very, very good, mate. Not blowing smoke up your ass, but it really is. What I find particularly intriguing, Ritchie, is you're just a three-piece now. Yeah. You're still called Five. Yeah. Do you feel in any way detached from the original Five?
Detached in what way?
So, for example, the other day, we so happened to be on a rerun of Top of the Pops. And Matthew sent me the recording, and I had never seen it from beginning to end. And my wife and I were sitting in bed and we were watching it and having a bit of a laugh about it. And when I was watching myself, I could not relate to myself at all. It felt like I was looking at somebody else.
Yeah.
So now that you have evolved into what Five is now, when you look back, do you feel like you're looking at somebody else, watching somebody else, hence the word detached? And do you feel now that you're completely new, ready to go again as a completely new artist?
Yeah. It's taken me 20 years,
likewise,
to properly process it, and to sort of, just to process it. So in that sense, yes, I do feel, I know what you mean when you watch old footage, and there's things where I'm like, I can't even really remember being there. And it's not that I was like drunk or on drugs or anything like that. I'm like, I barely remember that. And so there's some stories that like Scott will say, or Sean, do you remember when blah, blah, and you said this and I'm like, no, I don't remember that at all. And then there's, I guess there's just holes in your memory after years, isn't there? But I know what you mean. And I've heard Robbie Williams say that he felt like he just like loaned out his persona to something for a while. And I get that. That's something resonated with me with that. I think because you are always, you stop being an individual and you become blah from blah. You're always in that pocket, but you're a human being. There's lots more facets to who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question, and it's probably the most important question that I'll ask you. Are you happy?
Yes. Yes, I am happy now.
Tell me why.
Why? Number one, first and foremost, my daughter.
Yeah.
She is the little light of my life. She's 8. And I was, after the band, I used to do 5-year stints in different places. She's anchored me. She's made me stay somewhere. Again, I guess it's a purpose and a focus, and I love being a dad. It's the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, agree.
I'm also, I got during COVID, I started really getting into producing. So I've started making out, like, I'm into my house music and stuff. So like, I need a creative outlet. I'm a creative person. So, and I've got my pop head, but I'm like into just making some tunes. I'm like, yeah, man, it's a pop, like, So I watch this space on that, and I think, are you happy? Fundamentally, yes. There's always, life's a roller coaster, as the prophet Ronan Keating said. But you know what I mean? But there's always going to be ups and downs and things going on. But fundamentally, yeah, I'm in the happiest place within myself that I've been ever. Yeah.
Good. I'm absolutely delighted. Ritchie,
what about you, Ali? Are you happy?
Oh, mate, like you, it took me, it's 30 years this year since, we signed our record deal, 30 years. And it took me 20 years to be comfortable in my own skin about my own experiences. 20 years. And that's mainly down to my wife. Just sort of giving me the encouragement and the confidence to be able to talk about it. And I am now very much comfortable in my own skin about my own experiences. And hence why, when people talk to me about it, I'm quite open about it. And even though I still, to this day, suffer from imposter syndrome,
yeah, but everybody does, Ali. Everybody.
I know. I am so grateful for that.
I think if you don't suffer with imposter syndrome, actually, you're probably less likely to make it because you think you're too good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I knew I had to work really, really hard because my talent was very, very limited. But it drove me. And I know that there are millions of people out there who are far more talented than I ever could dream of being. I was thrown into a situation literally overnight, plucked from obscurity, thrown into it, whereas folk work years and years and years to get one little shot, and it was handed to me on a plate. And for that, I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah, and that's an important thing, actually, that I do want to say, because I find when I talk about the band, a lot of it was so mind-blowingly hard to get your head around. Even just the paranoia of what the tabloids are like when you're in a big band, and what, anyone you meet, it's not like you can just meet somebody and go, okay, they're now my friend. There's always a thing going, are they working for the Paps? Or not, are they working for the tabloids? Can I trust this person? That's exhausting. There's so many mentally exhausting things that, stuff like that. But opening the Brits with Queen,
I know,
is like, you pinch yourself stuff that I even look back now and I go, wow, man, like that was standing backstage with Brian May, and I do remember, and him going, me saying, I think, he went, yeah, rock on, Ritchie. And I was like, yeah, rock on, Brian. Let's go.
Cool.
Yeah, brilliant. There's memories and things that were unbelievable that I'm so grateful for. Yeah.
Magic, fella, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on and telling your story.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Ali.
All right, pal. We will catch up again very soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Ali.
Bye, fella.
Easy, man.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
My thanks to Ritchie Neville. If you enjoyed today's watch, I would be extremely grateful if you would please consider subscribing to the Accidental Popstar here on YouTube. All it means is just helping us build momentum as we head deeper into 2023 and bring you more exciting guests. That's it, we're all done for this edition of the Accidental Popstar. I really hope you enjoyed today's watch, and I'll see you again very soon for a brand new episode. Take care, bye for now.